How do we bring people together to create more through shared purpose? How do we capture that energy? So I'd like to have Cheryl Dorsey from Echoing Green come up and join me on the stage. Let's give her a massive round of applause. Woo! Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Would you have a seat in my living room? There's we set up some
little
water for you, and we're.
Do you care which way?
They put name tags.
Okay.
Apparently this is you.
An assigned seat. Perfect.
Unless you want to be disruptive, we could switch.
No, I'm all good. Good. Perfect.
Social innovation,
Beautiful
after all.
site. This is awesome.
So I'm a huge fan of your work. I work with a lot of social entrepreneurs, and so many of their stories begin with an Echoing Green story. You now have a network of, is it 700?
Closer to 800 now.
Sorry, 800.
It's all good.
Which is almost close to 1,000 if you round up.
That's exactly right. Let's do it.
You got to do Silicon Valley math. It's a little different. What have you seen? I mean, they've all done incredible work themselves. How have you seen that shared purpose, them to come together as a community to create that shared value?
Oh, well, that's interesting. I wasn't prepared to answer that, but it's all good. We'll just have the conversation. But good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you guys. And congratulations to Net Impact for 25 years. That's really extraordinary work. And you are part of this movement. And so it is all about movements, right?
Yep.
And I think that's probably where we'll go in this conversation. And I'm such a history geek and nerd, so I always love coming back to Atlanta. And we should just sort of contextualize ourselves. Like, remember where you are and what we're doing here in this incredible home of the civil rights movement. And it's interesting, 36 years ago today, Andrew Young was elected mayor, incredible civil rights leader, icon, cross-sector leader, great example of how you walk through the world with purpose, conviction, and have tremendous impact. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Mayor Jackson.
That is a big milestone.
Yeah. So in addition to Mayor Young, tons of incredible historical figures that sort of fill this space and fill this city. And they, first and foremost, recognized that it was not about them, that in fact it is about us. And they were always a part of something larger. And that really does come through the tradition and the principles and practices and tenets of social movement building. For those of you who don't know Echoing Green, we've been around 30 years now. It's our 30th anniversary this year. And it really has become one of the leading fellowship programs for emerging social entrepreneurs. And if you know nothing more about us, let me just say one more thing. Echoing Green, in the growing ecosystem of social innovation and social entrepreneurship, has really sort of planted its flag around the intersectionality of social justice and social innovation, right? And I think in part that was one of the reasons I was drawn to the community, because again, if you all are about impact, social impact, at the end of the day, I think sort of large scale change happens through normative and cultural shifts. It's moving hearts and minds.
Yep.
And if you can't do that at scale in a sustainable manner, all the rest is for naught. So I think what I continue to learn from the Echoing Green community specifically, but more broadly from social change leaders and social innovators, is this recognition that while they're doing the business that they're in, they're ultimately all about the business of building sustainable cross-sector social movements.
That's such a difference. I was part of the Ashoka Network at Draper Richards Kaplan, Manhattan Institute, but they shared social entrepreneurship, but no mission beyond that. And it seems like what really differentiates Echoing Green is that, among many things, but that shared social justice lens, which the other ones don't. How do you see that play out and making a difference in the network?
Yeah, I think sort of a recognition of what we're all here for and what the purpose is for, right? Because you can do the how and the what, but the why.
Yep.
And I think always keeping that at the center is really super duper important. And I think, you know, I mentioned that I'm sort of this history geek and history nerd, and I studied it in college. And, you know, there's always, I think, and I'm guilty of this as well, to sort of think about the moment that you're in and think it's like none other. Oh my gosh, it's all about to go to hell, and what's going to happen, right? And every once in a while I will go back and sort of read what historians are saying about this particular moment, recognizing that the past is always prologue. Like, we have been here before. The particulars might be different, but we've been here before. And the question, though, really becomes, then what is the response? And I think that's the really interesting moment. Like, I actually don't care about your career trajectories. I care about your character. And I care how you all are showing up as citizens. And your career will be one aspect of it, but only one aspect of it. So I think sort of a holistic approach as who you are as a citizen in your community, in this country, and as a global citizen is, I think, the much more important and timely conversation.
But isn't that dangerous? Because you start to separate sort of the moral self from the career self instead of seeing it as one continuum. And you start to talk about them as separate things.
No, I think, you know, in the way that the hallmark definition of social entrepreneurship is the blurring of sectoral boundaries, and many people think we've sort of pretty much achieved that, I think it's sort of the blurring of who you are as an individual, as a professional, as a friend, as a citizen, as a voter. It's all part and parcel of the same thing.
But shouldn't those careers be part of how you're making that impact?
Of course.
Yeah.
No, absolutely right. But I think it's one piece of that. And it's so interesting. I don't know if you guys hear it, but I swear in the last couple of weeks alone, I have had a couple people come up to me and sort of share, you know, like these millennials are going to change careers 15 times. Somebody says 17 times. Like, that's such an urban legend. That's actually not true, because I actually went back and read a bunch of articles about it. But not 15 or 17 times, but you will certainly switch jobs and careers certainly more than folks in my generation, baby boomers, did.
Yeah.
But I think what is interesting, and what I would hope most of you all in the audience who are sort of at the beginning of this trajectory, thinking about your own career trajectory, is this notion of mastery. And again, it's separate from your job, it's separate from your company, but it's about the skills and the insights that you acquire regardless of your employer. And I think that is another reason I so particularly enjoy working with a particular type of leader, just one type of leader, a social entrepreneur or innovator, is just the stunning and beautiful example of mastery. And again, it has nothing to do with your pedigree, where you went to school, or what you do in your day job, but it's just the knowing of it all, that you know your stuff and you are in the zone applying your skills and your gifts with the knowledge that you need to do that particular type of work, and you just keep getting better and better and better, as all the best curious learners do.
No, that's amazing. Earlier we were talking about some concerns you had around the professionalization of purpose. I'd love to, I mean, it sounds like some of those themes have come up, but I'd be curious to hear sort of what that means for you.
Yeah, you know, you know, we all sort of have to sort of think in sort of frames and narratives and memes. And again, it just helps us have conversations and sort of get to the brass tacks of the work that we're talking about. But I sort of worry a little bit that we don't sort of think too much about sort of the fetishization, if that's a word, I made that up, sort of fetishizing, right? Yeah, of this notion of sort of purpose. Because again, it's not about it's about, why are you doing this? Why are we all here anyway? And I presume most of you are here because you have a particular critique of the current status quo, and it's about sort of dismantling some of those structural barriers that present so many of us, most of the folks who are not in this room, from achieving their own sense of mastery and opportunity. So I think that's the work we all have to be about.
Yep.
So the notion of you know, how corporations show up in this, how universities show up in this. I think maybe it's my sort of old social justice muscles and sort of protest framework coming to the fore, but sort of worrying about, is this really being co-opted and being sanitized in a way that takes us too far away from the problems and too much a focus on sort of the actor and aren't I wonderful because I've sort of found this purpose. And I think I was just being a little too cranky and probably am a little too sleep deprived. I don't think we're there, but I think sort of that mental exercise of just really thinking hard about why this matters, right? So I think we're okay with that.
Which includes health benefits and other things that are along with that. So there's a lot of it that's universal. So this is a very challenging time in history. My daughter's 11, and we were watching with a bunch of her girlfriends the election last year. And by the end of the night, they were all just bawling for about an hour and a half. And my daughter asked me in the morning, "Daddy, why don't grown-ups understand that bullies are bad?" And I said, our generation wasn't really taught about bullies. So she created an organization called DC Bully Busters that has middle school girls going to DC to teach politicians why bullying is bad and why they should stop bullying each other.
Awesome.
Right?
That's
Because
awesome.
11-year-olds know more than a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And I think it's about character, right? And what are your thoughts on what we need to do as a society to make character a bigger part of what we prioritize?
Well, I think that's such a interesting example. And this is the first time I'm hearing that story, and I just love it so much. But I think, Aaron, this was just the perfect example of sort of this intergenerational play between you and your daughter. I mean, again, I'm coming back to Atlanta as being one of the key homes of the civil rights movement. So if you read a lot of literature, some of the oral history of some of the key civil rights activists, a lot of them started out as kids, right? Yep. They went to church with their parents every Sunday, and they would hear Dr. King and members of SCLC and SNCC sort of talking. And they got involved in part because there was someone proximate to them that they respected and loved who was in the fight. And that's what you do as a social innovator. And your daughter is modeling that. I think that is really absolutely essential to it, right? And in fact, when you read some of the oral history, you'll read about a lot of the activists who said, we got involved because it was exciting to us, right? It wasn't, maybe the initial thing was like, oh my God, this is really amazing. I get the oxytocin, the other neuropeptides are really going crazy like that. So I get involved. But that is the first step in then understanding sort of the sort of complex analysis of then what you're there to do. Yep. So again, I think the proximity of it all is super important. So the modeling that you're doing for your daughter, the opportunity you all have to be in proximity to other social change leaders, that's how you get there. Yep. And you make the road by walking, you really do.
So just in closing, I'd love to have your thoughts for the amazing audience here around what you've seen about how to not just understand your purpose and what you want to change in the world, but how do you move to that step of us? What is that first step? What should challenge people? What have you learned from the entrepreneurs you've worked with? What advice would you have for those in the room that want to be social entrepreneurs or have that drive?
Yeah, I mean, look, my first piece of advice is like, don't start something. Nope, right? Don't become a social entrepreneur that is about starting a new enterprise. For most of us, we want to be deeply engaged in the work of social impact, but there's so many avenues and opportunities to do it. You can do it from a corporate perch. You can do it joining the board of an organization. My colleague, Kate Hayes, who I'm looking at right here, is going to do a session after this, so please go. She is awesome, about how you learn sort of the governance techniques, principles, and practices to be a good board member of high-performing nonprofit organizations. There are so many pathways to social impact. Your only job is to figure out what you are best aligned to do. And again, I think that partly goes back to mastery, but I think it's also a personal journey that you all have to take in your own particular ways. And I think it's actually less about your resume and more about what sort of makes your heart sing, combined with your strengths and gifts, but also how people react to you. And when you start to put all that together and mix it up, there's real alchemy and magic to it. And if you can sort of figure that out, I think that's how you get to impact.
Yep. So are you going to be running for president in 2020?
No.
Everyone here is wondering.
No. Oh, please. No, and I will say, and I do worry about this generation that, certainly may look askance at sort of political leadership, but I think it is a worthy and noble cause. Public service was something that I grew up revering, right? And it is hard, and it is messy, and it's difficult, and I think in this current political moment, which is fraught, no doubt, like it is rough, absolutely. But again, I think the antidote to that is like, let's get really smart, committed young people, or just next generation, then get in the ring. Because again, that's the only way we're going to fix this. So I will never do it. I have worked in the executive branch of government. I really did see how the sausage was made, and I'm sort of an activist and advocate at heart. I can't do it. Nope.
They all say that, by the way. They all say that, by the way, but yeah.
No. But there are others of you who do need to do it, and let us know. We'll write you a check. We'll support you, but go do it.
Amen. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with us. It's a treat.
Absolutely. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Thank you
so much. Yeah.
Amazing.